I actually kind of enjoyed Vegas. It wasn't as naff as I thought it would be. Do you know what? The Gold Coast is it's the hotel I deserve.
We'll leave it at that. You can take from that what you will. Hey everybody, Robbie Strusinski here with Mr. David Lappin. How you doing, buddy?
Good to see you.
Likewise. All right, this is going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to just jump right in. We're going to start off with the question that everyone, as far as I know, is dying to know the answer to. Mr. David K. Lappin. What the hell does the K stand for, and how many other David Lappins are there that you feel the need to distinguish yourself?
Well, the truth is that my name is actually David Kilmartin Lappin, and I do go by that on forms, my passport, lots of different things. I think my Hendon mob is actually David Kilmartin Lappin as well as my mother's surname. So I have initialized the K over the years, I guess. No disrespect to my mom, of course, but just to simple it up, I guess.
Aha, got it. Okay. You're originally from Ireland, obviously, as viewers can tell. Now you live in Malta, but you lived for a spell, if I'm correct, in Connecticut.
Good research.
Thank you.
That's very good, yeah.
So why don't you give us a bit of a timeline and what you were doing in each of those places?
Okay, super quick timeline then. I started playing poker about 12 years ago. I was predominantly online. About maybe 10 or 11 years ago, I actually online playing poker. I met a lady, or somebody I assumed was a lady at the time. You're never quite sure, of course.
Oh, okay.
I actually met her in a...
The plot thickens.
I at the risk of naming a rival site on a full tilt sit and go.
Okay.
And we became friends and became sort of like online pals on Skype and all that kind of thing. And eventually met maybe a year later and then sort of hooked up, and we ended up a couple for about 5 years.
Okay.
And she had a couple of kids, 2 lovely kids, Max and Lily, which meant that I had to pretty much move over there. She didn't have the option to live in Dublin.
Got it.
So I moved to Connecticut, lived there for about maybe 4 years of my poker career. Sort of the up-and-coming years, if you like. And then in 2010, I moved back to Dublin. We broke up, unfortunately, and I've been living in Dublin until about 3 years ago, and then I moved to Malta.
Okay.
So yeah, I have to say shout out to my Chip Race co-host here. When I moved back to Ireland, I didn't really know anyone in the Irish poker scene, even though I'd been a pro for quite a few years. Darrow Carney I met very early on, and he sort of introduced me to everybody. He likes to tell people that I had no friends. The truth is I had no poker friends. I had a few friends. We ended up becoming good pals, and of course, all these years later, we're still very close.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about him a little bit soon. I read in an interview that you did with Lee Davey over at Calvin Ayre.
Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. The Chinkster, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That back in your early 20s, you worked in TV and film. Is that right?
Yeah, that is true. I actually grew up in a family who were filmmakers. My father is a producer, my stepmother is a producer. So I was always sort of surrounded by film people. I worked on some film sets as I guess when I was in school, even all the way back to like transition year, which is our funny year in our school cycle, where you can do work experience and those kind of things.
Nice.
I spent that working in the art department on a movie called The Boxer.
Okay.
I ended up working on as an extra in several of my dad's
fun.
films.
That's fun.
And then when I left school, I worked on a couple of movies during summers, and eventually when I left school altogether, I oscillated between working on film sets and working in a restaurant while I was going through my college years.
Nice.
I was surrounded by that. Once college finished, I studied philosophy. I did an MLit in philosophy, a couple of masters as well.
You did a what in philosophy?
I did.
What's that called? An MLit?
An MLit. It's kind of basically a year short of a PhD.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that was my main area of interest. I also studied screenwriting. I did a master's in screenwriting. I did another master's as well. Lots of college years in there.
Where is this in college?
All in Dublin, UCD, University College Dublin.
Got it.
And then also in IATT, Institute of Technology out in Dunleary, another nice part of Dublin.
Okay.
And specifically the degree in Dunleary was the screenwriting one, and that was where I was kind of going. Once I'd finished college, I had put together some pitches for TV shows, some movies as well, and I wanted to develop those ideas, and that was kind of what I wanted to get into the writing side of it now.
Right.
Neither of my parents are actually my mum was, you know what, she was a theatre actress, so there's drama all the way around there, and actually
goes in the genes, right?
Yeah, and in a sense, even though my dad and stepmom are film people, probably got my sort of interest in writing more from my mum, because I think writing and acting were much more closely linked than the kind of business side of the work that my dad did. So yeah, that was where that came from, and that was very much my passion and what I wanted to get into. Wanted to become a screenwriter.
So how philosophy, if I can ask? You said you were studying philosophy
for... It's just a great subject. It's just the I don't know, the underlying subject to almost everything. So it was fascinating for me to learn about the ancients. Eventually ended up specialising in hermeneutic philosophy, much more modern area of philosophy, and wrote my thesis kind of on the overlap between philosophy and drama, I guess, in a sense. So very much with an eye and moving in the direction I wanted to go, which was to be a dramatist eventually, although poker has gotten in the way over the years, or maybe saved me from a life of destitution. Right. So I tried to somehow scrape a living together as a writer.
Also, a man of the humanities, that's exactly my next question, is so when exactly did poker enter the picture for you?
It entered the picture because I wrote a TV show for the national broadcaster in Dublin, RTE, and they commissioned me to write a 6-part show as the showrunner, which was an amazing opportunity. I was only in my early 20s. And unfortunately, it was right bang around the time where, at least this is the story I tell myself, right bang around the time of the economic collapse in Ireland. And the budgets were all cut back quite considerably. They were developing 3 shows, and mine was one of those, and they only continued developing one the next year. My show was essentially scrapped or shelved or whatever you want to call it.
Put on the back burner.
I like to blame the economy. Maybe it was rubbish and they realised it. I don't know. But anyway, essentially I was unemployed, and I had started making beer money from poker. Started sort of playing a little bit of poker in my spare time. Probably a small winner, modest winner in games against other very poor players. I certainly wasn't a good player. Yes.
Did someone teach it to you, or like you watched it on TV? Or?
No, I did watch poker a lot. We had like home games, $5 sit and go home games with loads of good pals of mine going back years. So we all played poker very much sort of encouraged by Late Night Poker, a great British TV show that sort of showcased UK and Irish players in the I
think that was the first
1990s.
One, right?
Yeah, it really was. Yeah,
really ancient stuff. Okay.
Yeah, so that was that got my interest in poker as something I did socially or for fun. As I said, I lost my job. I was unemployed, really trying to make ends meet. Decided, well, play a little bit more poker. Maybe I can make, more than beer money. Maybe enough money to just get by until I get my next writing job.
An Irishman mentions beer. What is the chance, right? What are the chances?
Exactly. So yeah, it's terrible actually, just conforming to stereotypes for the viewer now. But no, seriously though, I ended up sort of having this career that snowballed from just trying to make enough money to pay the rent to, little by little, maybe a 1 year down the line, I was like, I'm still doing it, I'm still somehow surviving. Didn't really build up a bankroll in that first year, just made enough to get by.
Got it.
Second year made a little bit more, had a bankroll, building slowly, and then had a big result at a live event in Barcelona in 2009, and that was for almost $100,000, and that basically gave me a bankroll to play good stakes.
And you started jumping up like in stakes as well at that point?
Jumped up stakes online. Still didn't really play too much live, even though that result probably should have encouraged me. But it was around the time I was in Connecticut, and I just got to play good mid-stakes kind of games, 100 quid buy-in kind of games routinely online, where previously, as I was trying to grind it out in that first year, I was playing like $20 stakes, just trying to scrape by. So that's kind of how the career has gone and hasn't ended since then, thankfully.
So it's sort of like an overnight success that took like 13 or 14 years to happen. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, you could put it that way. For sure.
That's what. You mentioned your love for writing, screenwriting.
Yeah.
You have a blog.
I do.
You penned your first blog post in 2008. So it seems.
That's right. Yeah. That was I was playing the £1 Million Challenge. It was a full tilt event actually. My good friend Michael Craig, excellent writer. Who wrote
I know
the Professor
and Suicide King. Yeah.
And he also did the Full Tilt Strategy Guide, which was one of the books I learnt the game from to get good anyway.
Yep.
And Michael and I were correspondents. A really good guy. Shout out to Michael. I know he's not involved in poker too much anymore, but great writer. And he was covering the event, so I got this opportunity to kind of hang out with him. He introduced me to some of the pros at the time, who were some of the big names, of course. And that was a real sort of baptism of sort of being able to be in amongst. I met Joe Beavers that day,
Sure.
Hendon Mobsters, and
The original Hendon Mobster.
The original Hendon Mobster. And it was got Andy Block, Chris Ferguson. I met briefly that day as well. There was a lot of the world's big names in poker, and kind of for the first time got to rub shoulders with a few of those people.
So what gave you the impetus to want to start a blog and write?
Well, I guess I wanted to cover that event. I thought I had a sense in that moment. I'd been playing for about just over a year, and I thought, well, this is kind of me arriving. Like I'd done that year where I grinded out just enough to get by, maybe 20 grand just to live. And now I was going to one of these events. Now I didn't even have a good result at the event. I didn't cash, but I felt like this was my first step out into the real poker world, the one that I used to watch on TV, the one that I saw. And I don't know. I had this sense in the back of my mind. I should cover this. I should write down my thoughts. I should kind of write a diary.
That's the creative juices were flowing.
Yeah, and I think even in that first blog, I think I may have written a line somewhere in there, maybe towards the end, where I hoped that this was the beginning of my career.
I do believe that was what it said. Yep.
So I guess it was. There was some fortune telling in there, I guess.
So we're 10 years on from that now, and as far as I saw, it's 250 blog posts or so, even more than that.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's about 25 a year. So my question is, as I'm a writer, how do you decide what to write about, and when what is it to say, okay, I'm going to go sit down and write a blog post right now?
Well, what I would have to say is a lot of those 250, I was probably churning out one a week for the first couple of years, was very much a sort of a diary format, tracking all my kind of new poker, because everything was very new at the time, of course. And looking back now, like there's little strategy nuggets that are not good strategy tips, by the way. They're not worth reading.
Those.
Don't read those early ones. But I was in amongst that sort of diary approach, very conscious of the fact that very few people were reading my early blogs as well.
But you wrote it for yourself.
Exactly.
Got it.
I didn't feel an onus to kind of write for an audience. As time went by and the readership of that grew, but also as I guess my writing style matured, or my specific interest in what I wanted to write about in poker matured, I very quickly realised I didn't want to do little pithy what happened to me at the poker table today kind of story, unless it was a particularly good story or it had a way to relate back to a broader theme. I didn't want to do it like that, so I became much more about writing better quality blogs, I hope, in the more recent years, that were maybe much more like industry pieces where I was trying to find an angle, often interested by any crossover I could make between poker and the real world, because I think that's almost always the challenge for me in those blogs is how do I make poker understandable or relatable to people who don't play poker, and I hope they're readable for the most part.
I read a few of them. They're pretty good.
Yeah, you know your poker though, so I don't know. But yeah, hopefully people enjoy them. So some of them have been critical of the industry at different times over the years.
Not afraid to say what's on his heart.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some of them have been, I guess, kind of modified trip reports. Sometimes a trip report is an interesting story too. A lot of storytelling. Probably the most popular format that my blogs take from time to time is the gobshite, quote-unquote gobshite blog. Mightn't be a phrase you know, although I know you like the turns of phrase that Irish people use.
I do.
To any Irish viewers out there, they'll know what a gobshite is. It's basically an idiot.
Oh, I see.
And it's
Thank
a
you
word
for the translation.
and it's a word that my girlfriend will regularly use to describe me. And the gobshite sort of series of blogs that are sprinkled in there would be the ones where I usually lose a substantial amount of money somewhere, and hopefully it turns up, or I do something really stupid that gets me into trouble.
It's very relatable though, because a lot of us lose at poker. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I get into scrapes. Well, I'm not even losing money in poker, like literally leaving my bag with a lot of money.
Oh, like lost and found
losing
lost.
Things.
Oh, good heavens! Wow.
Yeah, so there's a few that I lost my passport on at least 2 occasions. In this very city, actually, right now we're in Bucharest. About 2 years ago, almost to the day, I lost my passport. I'm pretty sure in a kebab shop that also exchanged money, which is obviously a reputable place. Pretty sure I lost it there. Pretty sure there are many David Lappins all over Eastern Europe right now.
That's not all they did at the kebab shop, I suppose.
But I ended up spending a full day in the Irish Embassy here in Bucharest trying to solve my situation. It ended up being a really good story. Read that blog, actually. That's a good blog to read.
Besides poker, what do you do for fun?
For fun, I used to play cricket. That was probably my big
Really?
sports passion. That was what I
Not
played
baseball.
Not baseball.
Not baseball.
Baseball, basically the really good game that baseball is this horrible diluted version of, in my opinion.
One man's opinion.
Yeah, big American audience here.
At least half
half the people have gone. Okay,
but for the others, cricket, yeah, woo, tests, matches,
Five-day games
googlies,
where you
right?
can have
It's a leg before wicket. That's a big thing, right? I know my cricket. I just don't understand why everything is an innings, plural. It's an inning, one inning.
It's true, we do say innings, yeah.
Yeah, see, you got to watch your CNN Sport.
You switched it up. Anyway, until a couple of years ago, I was very involved in cricket, but as a player, and also I helped to run the cricket club. I played in Dublin. Shout out to Leinster Cricket Club, one of the best cricket clubs in Ireland. So, that was kind of a on-field enjoyment. Hanging out with the lads. Usually, a day of cricket is really getting up at 9 o'clock, going for breakfast with your team, and then having pints with them after the game until 2 in the morning. So they're full days away.
Are you a batsman or a bowler?
Definitely a bowler, although I was not a slouch with the bat. I used to bat
love that I
like
got the terms right. I got cricket knowledge.
All the words.
Okay.
But, so that, as a sport, that would be my big passion. But I haven't played for the last 3 years, basically since moving to Malta. I haven't continued with my cricket. I follow politics, but anyone who reads my Twitter will probably, maybe a lot of the poker people who read my Twitter are like, oh, I hate when he tweets about politics, but I do tweet a little bit about politics.
What's your Twitter, David?
At DK Lappin.
DK Lappin. Make sure you follow him.
Check it out. But I don't know, cinema, I guess. But that feeds back into, I guess, where I would like another career to go at some point in the future.
That's all. It completes the picture.
Completes the picture, exactly.
All right, so we're going to throw some numbers at you.
Okay.
About $1 million in online poker cashes, dollars. $500,000 in live poker cashes. Currently 49th on the Irish all-time money list. Do those numbers mean anything to you or motivate you to climb higher? Why or why not?
No, they don't, because they're all bad numbers in a way. They're all kind of misnomer numbers. I have a lot more than $1 million online winnings.
Oh, really? Okay.
I guess that's a pocket fives number, and I spent at least half of my career playing sit and goes and satellites.
Oh, I see.
So I'd say that numbers, you could probably multiply it by 3.5 or 4.
Got it.
But that's in a lot of skinny games where you're not making big 23%
Still
ROI.
Counts,
so
it
does count for sure, but it's not like I'm not trying to triple my implied earnings there. These were some very skinny games in my past.
Sure.
But no, they're not really. I guess money won is not a very good judge of where you are as a player because I'm sure there's people.
Even though the goal is to make money in poker, though, no?
Yeah, but I guarantee you could find people with more winnings who are losers in the game.
Oh yeah.
So I don't think it necessarily translates. I guess like bottom line is important. Absolutely, I would always want to be somebody who is profitable in the game, and I've never had an unprofitable year in the game.
That's an important. Not a lot I people can say that. That's pretty good.
I actually, the very start, when I guess I was playing sit and goes, I had in my first 72 months of playing poker, I had 71 winning months, which was very rare. But again, I was grinding sit and goes.
That's what we call run good.
Run
skill good.
Playing cowardly games where you're running up against
table selection, game selection is very important. You got to know where you're sitting. Sure. All right.
Maybe, but the Irish stuff, no. I actually could tell you most of my hand and mob stats because I guess you do kind of like checking it from time to time. Who am I getting above? Whatever when you have a little score. But I think Dara is number 1 on the all-time Irish number of cashes. I'm number 3 on that list. A future guest of our podcast, the Chip Race. Shout out to Chip Race.
Chip Race is the next question. It's like he's reading my script.
It's almost like I tune the segues for you. Mick McCluskey, really good friend of mine, actually, is going to be a guest on the show in a few weeks' time. Mick is 2nd, and I'm 3rd on that list. And I guess that stat doesn't speak to earnings either, of course, because actually I would have a very low average winning amount compared to a lot of people, much higher earnings up the list. But it does speak, I think, to being a bit of a live grinder. I do consider myself a bit of a grinder.
I understand that.
It's an unfashionable thing to admit to, but I've always been somebody who kind of came to festivals. We're here in Bucharest, and I want to play the 300, the high roller, the 1K main.
Sure.
Fire again if there's an option to fire again.
If you ask me, it's far more impressive to have the big scores in the low buy-in events. That means you really made it, or like you said, lots and lots of cashes. To someone who wins like $1 million, one score, and then you never hear about them again. Fine, but if you've gotten 100 cashes that it took you to make that $1 million, to me that's a sign you guys knows what he's doing, and I think so.
Yeah, I love the game. I still
great.
have a passion for the game. There have been periods, I don't want to misrepresent, I'd say maybe twice over the 13 years where maybe fell out of love with the game for a few weeks, a few months. Yes,
Sure.
Run bad will do that sometimes.
Right.
Or a feeling like you want to change things up. So there's been a couple
Right.
of times where I've taken, month off, couple of months off. But usually the passion for the game reignites again. I guess it's just something I really love to. I love the competitiveness of it. I love the also the fact that you're at this stage as well. You're sort of building on a solid foundation of a career, and I love writing another blog and adding another good blog to a collection of blogs.
And you've worked so hard to get to where you are. Like, why abandon it and go somewhere else? I get that.
Yeah.
Sure. You mentioned Dara.
Yeah.
I was Dara. You mentioned
I
Dara.
think your pronunciation's probably okay.
And you mentioned the chip race, of course. How did the two of you meet? Like, you're obviously co-commentators there. So how did you meet originally?
We were introduced by a mutual friend called Jono Crute. Jono was somebody, Northern Irish professional poker player, who's actually quit the game. Very successful guy, didn't need to quit the game, quit by his own volition about 3 or 4 years ago. But Jono was a kind of online friend of mine, and he knew Dara probably from both online and live. And he introduced us at the Irish Open, I think it was 2011.
Like, you guys clicked instantly?
Yeah, like... Dara's going to hate me for saying this, but very early on, like, we had a really interesting chat. I think we started talking about Beckett or someone that we both had an interest in. In
the writer.
of literature, yes, exactly. And,
Samuel Beckett.
And we went on a mandate, I guess for want of a better term, in a very nice restaurant in Dublin. Maybe a few days after that, literally got on like a house on flyer.
That's
just had loads
amazing.
of common interests, loads of things that we could relate on, and friendship was born for sure.
That's wonderful. It's great to, like, when you listen to the chip race, you can obviously hear there's a tremendous rapport between the two of you.
That's
it's
nice
really
to
cool.
hear. I'm
It's
glad
the
that,
truth.
I'm glad that comes across.
They're not just putting on a show. You can't bluff for 6 seasons. 6 seasons.
6 seasons.
End of the
now,
wow,
just
you can't bluff 6 seasons of podcasts, right?
That's right.
There's an interview you did last year with Jason Glatzer from Poker News. You discussed the podcast's origins. I believe you started in 2015.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Did you have any experience podcasting prior to that? Because I said to myself, if not, or like, did you feel confident in your ability to just go ahead and start hosting a poker podcast?
Yes and no. I think Dara and I have both been given the gift of the gab, so we're both.
You kissed the Blarney Stone. You kissed the Blarney Stone. That's what you get.
That's
the gift
exactly
of the gab,
that's
right?
how you get it. Yeah.
That's where's that in Blarney?
In Blarney,
in Ireland. Yeah.
You have to get lower down to kiss it.
Yeah.
You kind of get people hold your legs, but it's I guess I'm one of those. I'm a yapper, and Dara's not a yapper.
Okay.
But he's more the guy in the conversation who doesn't say anything for a while, and then leans in and says something very interesting. And actually, in combination, I think those two personalities work well for a podcast because
the yin and the yang.
I just give it all that and just loads of inane shit, and then Dara just leans in and says something much more interesting every now and again.
Well, you have to obviously pay attention throughout the entire podcast to catch it. You're both pretty well established as professional poker players, you and Dara. You're fortunate to have done well. You're sponsored by a great company, by Unibet. The podcast, then, I guess at this point, it's a labor of love. Why do you do it?
Yeah, no, it definitely is a labor of love. I think, and there's no the process of creating a podcast.
Sure.
An awful lot of time goes into research for every guest.
Sure.
An awful lot of time goes into the edit as well, because we do quite a heavy edit on the show. People who listen, obviously we have those 5 segments, and you're cutting in between everything. Also trying to make people sound the best you can. It's like a trust thing. I always feel like when you have a guest on, a guest is like somebody in your house, and you want to do your due diligence, a phrase you used earlier, when preparing for them to arrive, so you can have nice conversations.
Yep.
But also then you want them to sound the best version of themselves. So
Yep.
if they slip up, just like you're going to have to cut this interview and cut out all the rubbish I've been talking, you want to get rid of those bits.
You get the director's cut. You get the whole.
You get the director, exactly.
Yeah.
So you just polish up that little bit to make them sound. Yeah, it is something people will say. Go, I sounded better than I thought I did. And I'm kind of like, yeah, you did, because I spent ages maybe piecing it together at the end. But no. People come on, they give great interviews. We're very selective with who we have on the show. We always want people to have on. To come on with a bit of a purpose, you know, somebody that have a story to tell if they're one of the players who's telling their life story, or somebody from the industry such as yourself. Look forward to having you on the show, by the way.
Tune in.
To talk about something going on in the industry or something specific like that. So, no, it's very much a passion project, but at the same time, God, we'd be lost without Unibet, I have to be honest. David Pomeroy, big shout out to Dave.
Absolutely, he's a great guy.
Great guy. He is moving on to pastures new in the near future, so I wish him luck in his future endeavours. But I have to say, David saw the opportunity in what we had, which was an Irish-oriented podcast, recognised that it could easily be expanded into being a kind of a Europe-facing with a bit of America-facing, English-speaking world-facing, I guess, and have broader appeal. And he was... I'd like to say sort of like the cleverness of what he did, or the support, or the way he expressed support for us, was to leave us alone. He sort of just trusted us and said, I think you guys will curate this show well. He's had almost no intervention. Like, intervenes every season to kind of go, oh, what's the shape of it, or wants to take a kind of a broad picture, but very much trusts us in the details, and that's lovely, because then, you know, you have the creative freedom to kind of make the show that you want.
And then it's the best it's going to possibly be.
Think so.
It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I think so.
But so let's talk about Unibet for a minute then. So how did you first get into a relationship with them? Did they just sort of like pick up the phone and say, hey, you guys want to be ambassadors? Like, how did it work?
I think for a period of time before we were signed, Dara and I, through our blogs, became synonymous with maybe a discontent in the way the direction of European poker was going, the direction of some maybe decisions that were happening online with some of the sites, decisions that were happening in live events. And we were very vocal about that. We've always been, as you said, mouthpieces who will, you know, maybe do a hot take when we feel it's necessary.
Yep.
And Darren and I penned a number of blogs over a period of about, I would say, 6 months to a year that was very critical at a number of areas in the industry, and only because we love the game and we care about the game and we want to see all the companies do the right thing and improve.
A good standpoint.
Oh yeah, like there's no there's no malice, and even as a Unibet ambassador, it's not like we're out there, you know, throwing rocks at the competition either. I would never be that way. You would want to go to a competitor's event and see them do it really well, because you care. I see us all as caretakers of the game in a sense. But yeah, for a period of time, and I think everybody knows what that period of time was. It was a year or two where really you felt like decision after decision after decision was more bad news for the players. Decisions that were going to ultimately curtail the number of pros in the game. Yep. Maybe the goal was to kill off the pro. We felt at one point as well, and maybe just a bit of greed from the sites. And I think Unibet recognised that they sort of agreed with our vision, and they wanted to have their online client and their live events with the focus that we were talking about was the way poker grew. It's the way poker has been successful, and changing those things and reorienting the way the industry operated was a bad thing. And I think that sort of, it was like our voices, suddenly there was a big overlap between the way they saw themselves as a company and the growth that they wanted to achieve from quite a small place, because they had just created their own clients, so they were building up something from the ground, and maybe having ambassadors who had a similar voice, so that we weren't going to be going out there and like shilling and peddling a sort of a company line. We were going to go out there and actually say what we really think.
He's not shilling anything.
I will shill when necessary. I will shill when Chibrace. Just no. It is not beneath me to shill. Don't get me wrong. When it comes to the chip race, but I suppose what I mean by that, I've wrecked the set now. This is terribly unprofessional. Anyway, so but I think it's much better.
Put it on my forehead.
I think it's much better when the ambassadors, and I mean this for all ambassadors, for all other sites as well. If you have the freedom to go out and say what you really think about poker, and that's also your company's vision, that's a very easy place to be.
Yeah.
And actually, David was very adamant to us from day one. He was like, even when you don't agree, there's going to be times when you don't agree with Unibet. Maybe we're doing something wrong in live events that you think is wrong. Maybe you think the structure of this tournament could be better. Say it. He always said say it. Blog about it and say it.
That's pretty cool.
Because then, even if we don't do what you say, there will be...
At least you'll be true to yourself. There's the
integrity.
integrity.
You'll be true to yourself. You'll have integrity, but also you'll create that dynamism in the company that maybe internally then you're pulling in different directions. And that, you know, I think they understand that means as a company they'll hopefully make better decisions, because there won't just be yes men around. And I think that's a good thing as well, to have people who will be reflective or self-critical. I think that's really important.
Cool.
I think that we could do it more of that actually in poker in general.
Yeah. Well, we're here at the Unibet Poker Open in Bucharest, Romania. Lots of tournaments going on. You obviously play tons of tournaments. To what extent do you play cash games, if at all?
Very little, although I am really happy to see that Unibet have partnered up with the Cash Game Festival, because those guys are travelling around maybe 10 or 12 venues a year.
Sure.
They've been in my hometown of Malta a few times in St. Julian's. And when the opportunity arises, it is fun to kind of splash around in those. I'm definitely not a cash game player. I think I've done pretty well in cash, but I think that's only because I've run well in a small sample size. Whenever I've played live, particularly televised live cash games, I seem to have actually had quite good winning sessions. Almost made me go, maybe I should be doing this instead. But then I realised, no, hang on, Dave, you had aces and he had kings. Stop pretending you're someone you aren't.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, everyone's playing Hold'em these days. I mean, like, everyone's good at Hold'em. I mean, like, everyone's improving, studying. I mean, you can't compare it to even 5 years ago.
No,
everyone's getting better at Hold'em. In that sense, do you play any games besides Hold'em? Do you think it's important to play mixed games?
I love loads of other versions of poker.
Okay.
My grandmother taught me how to play stud poker at a very early age. She used to teach me gin rummy and stud poker when I was, I'm going to guess, like 7 years of age.
Oh, wow.
So I vividly remember like sitting on the balcony in her house.
That's awesome.
Playing cards on a summer's day. We only had about 2 or 3 of them every year. So, but I do remember that as like an early memory in my mind. So I can play. I used to play horse. So I used to play the rotation in horse.
Okay.
I can play PLO pretty decently. I have a few results in PLO over the years. I think Raz is one of my stronger games.
Okay.
I would say maybe stud high-low is one of my weakest. I don't do the Badugis and the Batusis and into all those other versions yet. Exactly. Maybe
okay.
I will. Triple draw, I wouldn't have much knowledge in either. I think maybe the horse games and PLO would be the other games I can play, not much besides. But yeah, I love playing PLO at the live festivals because it's nice to just switch it up for one of the afternoons. You know,
it's good. Variety is the spice of life, right?
Exactly.
You've been playing professionally for almost 11 years now, and looking back, what would you say have been some of your most enjoyable moments and some of your most challenging moments? I think you mentioned a couple times where you may have fallen out of love with the game, for example.
Yeah, that big result in Barcelona was a big moment in terms of giving me the bankroll and the freedom to do other things. That was fantastic, very exciting as well. Live final table, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think signing with Unibet was a very proud moment because it's sort of, I guess it's the holy grail to get a pro deal.
Yeah.
And I chased one for years with other sites and different things, and even like promotional things that they would have run that would have given you more attention, and it never quite happened. So that's
also
very
validation.
satisfying.
Yeah,
there's something satisfying and validating, and also the platform it gives you to give back to, the game in a sense. I always feel like content creation is something I was passionate about early on. Blogs pretty much satisfied that for a long time. I guess the Chip Race podcast more so does it these days. But I always felt like you want to give something back to the poker community that they don't have to pay for, that they can enjoy, and that's quite satisfying. Honestly, the podcast I'm very, very proud of. I know I don't want to circle back to that again.
You can. It's a great podcast.
I do feel like years from now, if I stop playing poker today, I think 10 years from now I look back and go, well, no, they were good shows. I would be genuinely kind of proud of what we put out. I think Darren and I have taken a lot of care to balance the show, not to ever make it too, modern pro, old school pro, all the different demographics you could have. Push the role of women in the game as much as we can as well. I think maybe women only make up about 3 or 4% of any live event you'll see around the calendar. Maybe that number increases to 10 or 12% online.
Wow.
But we really try and push a sort of a metric where at least a quarter of the guests are women, and I would obviously love to see women be half of poker.
And you have like the Queen's rules here.
Yeah, that's a cool initiative. Yeah,
that where the queens beat the kings, so they're going to have a special tournament like that here. I'm sure going to have more than 3% of women playing that one. I sure hope so. I've seen a lot of women walking around here. So.
Absolutely, the symbolic value of that I think is very important. Some people have sort of derided it recently, and I know one high-profile event in the UK didn't go ahead with those rules in place because people were worried would they get confused, and how would people feel if they made mistakes, and would they get angry, would there be a negative response? But really that's a symbolic gesture. there is a king and a queen, one is male, one is female,
Right.
one outranks the other. Why not flip?
It's
flip
native.
that?
It's native integration of a great very important social movement into the game of poker. I mean, it just makes tons of sense.
Yeah, I do like it. I have to say.
Just to circle back to that question, though, any specifically challenging moments during these last 11 years?
One big downswing in 2010. I suppose it coincided with coming back from the States. I felt a bit lost. I'd broken up with my girlfriend, and it was a kind of a challenge to sort of get back on the horse and play again.
Yep.
I had downswung for a while as well, so that was probably a big time. I give Darrow Carney an awful lot of credit there. He really kind of got my head back into poker and thinking about the game right, and moral encouragement as well.
Yep.
I have to say, like, the biggest challenge of the last few years, I have a baby son, Hunter, and very happily with my girlfriend of
16 months.
He's 16 months.
Yep.
And very happy with my girlfriend of 6 years now, Sharon, who is a fantastic mom. And actually, we used to go out way back when I was like in my early 20s. We went out for a little while. She saw sense. I wasn't a good catch back then. Probably not that good a catch now, to be honest, either. Maybe she settled. Who knows? But I certainly haven't settled. And I have to say the daily challenges of life are probably the tougher stuff, but they're so rewarding though as well. So that's the stuff that's kind of hard. You're responsible for more than yourself now,
Sure.
and that was a big turning point for me. But very proud dad, very proud boyfriend of Sharon, and even though there are challenging times, and there have been very challenging times all the way through that relationship as well, it wasn't always easy for Sharon and I. It's been so rewarding. It's so rewarding for us to be as solid as we are now with our little fella.
I love it. Well, I met you actually just a couple weeks ago for the first time at the World Series of Poker. Back in 2013, you wrote on your blog that, quote, heading to Vegas for the WSOP was akin to social contagion. Those are your words, sir.
Well
5 years later now, you have just gotten back. I believe this was your first World Series of Poker. Is that correct?
Yeah, my very first
Okay,
one.
we got the research right.
Yeah, you did.
So, what finally made you to decide to take that trip out? How did it compare to your expectations, and what was the experience like for you?
Okay, with the information I had available to me up to, did you say it was 2011?
2013 was the
2013,
post,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, and I probably wrote one of those in 2011 and 2012 and maybe 2014
I
as
didn't
well.
read all 250 blogs. I read a few, but that one stuck out.
It did become a kind of a thing every year where I would kind of explain my reasons, because I guess everyone is like, you're a pro, you're bankrolled, why are you not going out to Vegas? That seems like the obvious thing you
Yeah,
should
of course,
do every
everyone
year.
goes to the World Series. Yeah.
And I guess I'd give this reason. For the first maybe 3 or 4 years I was in poker, I wasn't rolled to go out to the World Series.
Okay.
I think you do need to be responsible with your bankroll.
Can't play with scared money. I get that.
that kind of
Sure.
thing. So it just wouldn't have been a good choice, and I made a good choice, I think, in those years. Then Black Friday happened, and all the good players would go off and play in America, and they couldn't play online while they were there. They were amazing months. It was like a guaranteed like 20 or 30k month online.
Why didn't
if
you
stayed
tell me?
home.
Dude, I would have played. Yeah.
So I was just like, I can't leave. Like, you have to just like grind 60, 70 hour weeks in June and early July for that reason.
Yep.
So I did that, and I used to justify it on those grounds. It was like, I can make a quarter the money I make in a year in these 5 weeks. So I did that, and I think that was a good reason. I think I probably started making a mistake by not going about 3 or 4 years ago. I think I started moving more into playing more live. I think live became softer in the last few years, and I think that was a real opportunity, particularly with and I don't want to use this term overly disrespectfully, but because it's not their fault, but American players have not had access to online.
It's the truth.
They can't learn the game, keep up with the game in the hyperspeed that online allows. So they're probably sitting there in casinos reinforcing bad habits and mistakes, and then they show up unforced to the World Series, and they are soft money, and that was soft money I let slip. And on the flip side, I think online has got tougher and tougher and tougher.
Got it.
So I think probably from around 2014 on, maybe I should have been going out there. I realised that mistake because I was out there this year, and I think it was eye-opening that I could have been out here for at least 2 or 3 weeks of every summer.
Got it.
But the reason I don't think I would have. I think I'd have been still stubborn. Only Unibet sent us to Vegas last November for the Unibet European Open.
Yeah.
I was in the Win. The Win.
It was a cool event.
You're going somewhere.
I saw.
You're going to the Win. It's like really plush, and I just felt like. oh, I actually kind of enjoyed Vegas. It wasn't as naff as I thought it would be.
No social contagion.
In small doses, I was like, oh wow, I could totally do this. As I said to you earlier, I'm a grinder.
Yeah.
There's nowhere else you can grind
Yep.
live, like 5 tournaments a day if you need to.
Yep.
Which you do when you're busting everything. So I thought, so I did. I said it to Dara. I said, I think I'm going to go to Vegas this year for just a couple of weeks.
You had a good time?
And a really good time room with Dara, which made it as well.
That's
Because that was
great.
just good fun, having somebody I knew.
At the Gold Coast, I believe.
Yeah,
I may
that
have
doesn't
been there.
make it sound
I
good.
may have been there though. It's a great. I like it. It's a great place.
Do you know what? The Gold Coast is it's the hotel I deserve.
We'll leave it at that. You can take from that what you will. I liked it. It was nice. It's a nice.
If my girlfriend's with me, she wouldn't let me stay in the Gold Coast. If I'm, going somewhere on my own, I wouldn't let myself stay anywhere much worse than that, but I also wouldn't let myself stay anywhere better because I'm too cheap and I wouldn't pay for a better hotel when I'm just going to be sleeping in the bed. So, yeah, it's probably the hotel I deserve.
Gotcha. Well, last question here because we're running out of time.
Go for it.
What sort of goals and hopes do you have for yourself as far as a pro and in life in general over the next decade?
Okay.
It's a big one. I always save the best one for last.
It's always been about the money. Honestly, like there's nice legacy things in being a pro for this long. Obviously, win a big title, but I throw my trophies in the bin. Can I say that? Oh God,
Really?
I probably lost the remainder of your
Wow.
viewers. I have no interest in trophies. Could I throw a bracelet in the bin? Probably. I genuinely that would be a tough one because I could probably sell it on eBay. But I'm just not about trophies. I'm about winning because the guy who wins gets the most money.
Yeah.
I'm all about the money because I would love poker to fund other things. I would love poker to fund a writing career that would not be under pressure from the outset. I would love to have more money so I could buy a nicer house and provide for my family more and things like that. And also the game of poker it's sort of pure capitalism in game form. And I'm not a big fan of capitalism, if I'm honest. It actually doesn't marry well with my personal values. But the game is there, the rules are the rules. Once you're in it, you better play the game the right way. And so I do, and I try and do as well as I can for the money, but then once I have the money, I want to do maybe more moral or principled things with it. So the more the more I can get, the more I can improve my own life and the life of people around me. And maybe have a more balanced life as well. But yeah, I know people would say, oh, trophies and
But
titles.
he wants to do good things with the money. I totally get it.
I do.
I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there is David Lappin. We're here again at the Unibet Open at Bucharest, Romania. Thank you very much for your time, man. This is awesome. I really enjoyed it.
Chatting to you, Ryan.
Thank
It's
you.
been really good. I'm so glad you're here for the week.
Oh, you're very sweet.
Looking forward to watching this and other ones that you do.
Thank you very much.